Do you know that you do not need to spend hours writing emails, Instagram captions, and wholesale promos every month? You can actually batch all of your marketing content in under an hour. No more blank docs, no more I'll just post later. Just swipe, tweak, and go. The Product Marketing Bank is your marketing shortcut. A done for you vault of high converting email copy, promo templates, sales strategies, and social media hooks. Custom built for wholesale brands. And yes, you'll even be shown exactly how to repurpose everything for your direct to consumer audience, saving you hours of time and energy. The Marketing Bank helps you show up with strategic, seasonal content exactly when your retailers are planning their buys. If you're tired of Googling, what do I even say in this email? It's time to let the Product Marketing Bank do the heavy lifting for you. Join now at productmarketingbank.com.
I would argue most of your employees have come from corporate. A lot of them have, or maybe they've come from just an organized small business otherwise, and they're expecting you to give them good compensation and good benefits. They are wondering if you're happy with their performance. They're wondering what happens if you're not happy with their performance. They would like to know more about the expectations, but you're not offering it. And you're doing it kind of in the name of, we're not corporate, or like,
Yeah.
we don't need all that. But then your employees are sitting around kind of floundering. And so you owe that to them as a small business owner with 3 people, 5 people, 8 people. You still need a legitimate structure.
Hi, friends. Welcome to She Sells Differently, the show for aspiring women entrepreneurs looking to overcome the fear of selling and grow thriving businesses from a place of authenticity and confidence. I'm Andee Hart, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I knew in my heart that I was called to use my gifts for something more, something different. That's exactly why I created the She Sells Differently podcast. Each episode is going to deliver you business strategies, tools, and mindset shifts to help set you and your brand apart from our culture's expectations. It's time to elevate your sales and build a profitable, sustainable business you're proud of, one built on integrity, grace, and humility. It's time to learn how to sell differently. Welcome to the She Sells Differently podcast. I am so excited that you are here today, and I have a very special guest. I have Kerri Roberts with Salt and Light Advisors. Welcome, Kerri. So thankful that you are here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, Kerri is the founder of Salt and Light Advisors. It's a people operations and HR firm based in rural Missouri, so not that far from me in Arkansas. And with over 20 years of experience in strategic HR, she specializes in helping small businesses create healthy, people-centered operations. She previously served as a senior examiner for the Missouri Quality Award and is trained in the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award criteria. She also hosts the podcast Don't Waste the Chaos, which I was recently on, so we will make sure and link that episode as well. And she explores leadership and entrepreneurship through candid conversations on her podcast. I'm so thankful you're here. Welcome again, Kerri. I'm so excited for my listeners to hear from all of your wisdom and experience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to spending some time with you again. That episode that you were on, I loved it. It just came out recently. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Yes. And when we first talked, we were just talking before we hit record, but there were just so many pieces that really resonated with me when we first talked that I have just been mulling over since. And so before we dive in fully, I would love for my listeners just to hear about your journey, because we really have a similar background in that we were both in the corporate world and now we're both entrepreneurs, self-employed. And I know a lot of my listeners are wanting to make that leap as well. So talk a little bit about your journey and where you have been and where you are now.
Yeah. So I'll kind of sum it up briefly because I've moved around a decent amount, which is part of the reason why I was set up for entrepreneurship. But I spent a few years in healthcare and then went over to a distribution company because I wanted to work in HR. The healthcare facility I was at was like, no, we only take people with HR experience. And at the time, I was in my 20s and I thought, I'll go get HR experience and I'll come right back here and I'll show you that, you should have hired me and all of that. And long story short, I left that sector and never came back because I found my way to private business and just realized that the pace of private and for-profit business is a really good fit for me. And so started my HR career at this distribution center, spent around 5 years there, actually met my husband there. And that's when I got involved with the Missouri Quality Award and the Malcolm Aldrich National Quality Award. So really in HR, but that real bent toward operations and strategic planning, which I'm so grateful looking back that in my mid 20s, I found myself in this place because it really set up a really strong foundation for me. From there, I got recruited to a mortgage company and helped to start their HR foundation, then started their learning and development organization, then kicked off their e-learning team. So a really great time at that organization, and then got recruited over to higher education. I worked for a university system and learned pretty quickly that that was a little too government vibe for me and very consensus driven. Everything moved very, very slow. And I'm glad that I learned that, but that was 18 months, probably too long of a tenure in that world for me. And put some feelers out and said, hey, I'm looking to make a move. And I had a private insurance agency reach out and say they were looking for a COO. And so that was my foray into the C suite world. And kind of made my way through the HR specialist to the coordinator to the manager to the director and then VP level and then to that C-suite position and spent about 5 years in that organization. Through that time, we went from in the red to in the black and ended up selling a majority share of that company. So I got some M&A experience, mergers and acquisitions, really enjoyed that. And when we sold majority share, I took a dual appointment at the company that purchased us. And so I kept that COO role at the agency and then a chief marketing officer role at the umbrella company. And shortly after that, I thought, okay, I had got this entrepreneurial spirit. I think I'm ready to go out on my own. And so I sold my shares and spent about 5 months just wandering. I did a silence and solitude retreat. I spent a few weeks in Israel with my husband. We went on a spiritual journey there, walked in the footsteps of Jesus. And when I got back, I got a really great job offer and fell right back into those ski tracks that I had been in before. It was good money. And as a female executive, I don't take for granted that a lot of females don't get the opportunity to have C-suite roles and to make money at that level in other people's organizations. And so I was flattered and I took it. And within a couple of months, I was right back to, gosh dang it, I meant to start my own business. And so I approached that firm and said, I really would like to start my own business. I think that I could work like on a consultative basis for you as a contractor. You could save a chunk of my salary. You could save my benefits fees and I could go out on my own. And within 24 hours, they came back to me and said, yes, we will be your first client. And I literally stood up an LLC over a weekend and announced on my Facebook page, I started a business and it's been off to the races ever since. That was April of 2024
Wow. So that was
or
literally
2023. I'm sorry, April of
okay.
2023. Yes.
So that was 2 years ago, right at 2 years ago. Oh my goodness. So let's talk a little bit about the courage that I just took, because I guarantee you my listeners are hearing that and they're going, oh my gosh, like I just wish I had the courage to take that leap. And I know, like, I hear that, we get flattered because we get a job offer and just that experience. Like, I've been there and it's like, okay, like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But then we are working for someone else's dream and we put our dream on the back burner. And so, talk a little bit about the courage to actually take a stand and say, I'm going to work for my own dream. And yeah, just how that came about, how you actually like got that courage.
Yeah, some of it is from a healthy place and some of it's from a tough place, and I think that's part of all of our stories. But For me, I had moved organizations about every 5 years. I know that was a long-winded answer, but I think a lot of times, especially women, we get sensitive thinking like, "Oh, we've job hopped," or, like people are viewing us in a certain way, and so are we credible to others, and what makes us qualified and all of that. And so I wanted to share my journey because I think so many times when I say I was a 20-year, C-suite executive, then people are like, well, of course she went out on her own. Like, of course that makes sense. And there was some dicey periods in there. When I would leave one organization, it wasn't always because I was getting clearly recruited and everything was perfect over here. It was like, I probably am ready to wrap this up. This isn't going perfectly for me, or this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So I've made a lot of changes. And now looking back, if I wouldn't have done all of that, I wouldn't have all of this experience in these different sectors and things like that. So while sometimes we look at our path or our journey as a weakness or something that might hold others back from supporting us, sometimes it's literally the very building blocks that would make sense to propel us to the next season. And so sometimes it's just that mindset shift. And during that time period, my husband was like, "You should start your own business." And I said, "I'm a mom and I want to be a good mom." And based on the home that I was raised in, my mom would regularly say things. My dad was an entrepreneur and she would say, like, "Oh, dinner's going to be cold again tonight because your dad has a client," or, your dad couldn't come to your track meet or whatever because of work. And so I had it in my mind that if you work for other people, you can have a better balance in your life.
Mm,
And what I've learned is that in my experience, I was so upside down in other people's businesses, working so much that I've been able to fashion this business the way that I actually want it to be. I'm not at the mercy, and I'm not saying anybody put unrealistic expectations on me. I put them on myself when I was working for other people. I had something to prove, or I had a chip on my shoulder, or I felt like I owed them something because they had recruited me over and given me this salary. And so now I have to work and get myself out of balance. And so I think spending the time to reflect and really take a look at what you've built and then how you can take that and move it into the future. And nothing is a prison sentence. Let's say you start your own business and within a year you're drowning, or you're like, this actually wasn't a fit, or it's not a good fit for my family. You can always change your mind again. And
mhm.
so I think if we can remove those shackles of, I have to make the perfect decision and I have to know exactly where this is going, and just give it a shot, a real shot, not, 6 months and I can say I'm 2 years in and it still feels wild. I'm still very much in the building phase. I'm still, refining my offers, but giving it a real fair shake and betting on yourself. No one is thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself.
Amen. Yes. And I think that's so important. Something you just said. You said, I'm still 2 years in and I'm still building, I'm still refining my offers. And that's important to note because it takes time. It takes time and you have to be consistent. There's not just a magic bullet that, you start your own business and you're going to be successful in 2 months, you know? And something else that you said last time that we talked, and I think this really goes into that conversation, that difference between courage and confidence. And you and I have both had a lot of experience in corporate. Both, you in HR had a lot of experience in sales. And I know a lot of my listeners are, in that space where they're bringing a lot of this experience to the table. And something you said really resonated with me. You mentioned, we think that we're going to jump into being self-employed and have all of this confidence. And it's almost like you kind of have to rebuild that muscle being self-employed. And so talk about that difference between courage and confidence, and how have those two shown up for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think a lot of people use courage and confidence interchangeably, but that's not true. And that's not by definition what they are. So, courage is something that we have inside of us that we can show up with. It's like doing it scared. Are you scared? Do it anyway. That is courage. We come into it shaking and nervous, but we just kind of force ourselves to do it. Whereas confidence is something that appears once we've, like you said, built the muscle. And so, once we've done hard things, it's easier to do hard things. And once we've, like, for example, I wrote a book over the last couple of years, and now I'm not worried about writing the second book. But the first book, just starting on this author journey, it felt daunting. The writing process was hard. The editing process was harder. And then I thought the publishing process was the most fun part, but it was wonky and the timing didn't go the same way that I thought it was going to. And I had some hiccups. And so that whole process, the whole time I felt a little anxious. It was tough. I didn't feel confident through the process. I felt nervous. And now that I've done it and I've got my book has been published and we're live as of last week and it's out there. Now I know for book 2, book 3, and I already know what I'm going to write on for book 4. I feel much more confident to show up, to understand what the process is, to know that I can navigate it. And so that is confidence that comes after having done something. So we build that over time.
I love that. And I think that the importance there is that you show up and you act. I think a lot of times, I know for me at least, I can tend to let like the perfectionism or the fear, hold me back from even showing up. And so that is so important to have the courage to show up and to act and to move forward. You mentioned that, you're passionate about redefining success. And so what does success look like for you now, being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, and how have you redefined it?
Yeah. So when I was in corporate world, just candidly, I would say success for me was I lived in a almost 7,000 square foot home. My kid went to private school. We were a country club family and we would fly private. And I have lots of bags with lots of monograms on them. That was success for me at the time. And I'm glad that I reached that. I'm not saying that that's not success, but I was definitely climbing to get there. That was the goal. And that's, having the closet that had the bench in it and the window and, all of that stuff. That was something that was very important to me at the time, whether that made me materialistic or not. I wanted that. I felt like that came along with the executive title and a lease with the new car every 2 years. That was success for me. And what I realized once I hit that and then stayed at that for a number of years, and my husband's a mortgage broker and he had a similar picture of success for himself too, and we were both producing at that level. So we kind of built a little mountain and climbed up on top of it. And we realized we were so tired. I was 50 pounds overweight. I was carrying around so much inflammation and I was exhausted. I was short tempered with my child. I didn't really value one on one quiet time with my husband. Like I had all of these things, but I was so out of balance. And so success for me now, we sold the house, we left the private school, we pulled out from the country club. I got out of my lease and bought a vehicle. Now my house is 3 miles down a gravel road. You have to cross a creek to get here. We live on a 140-acre farm. We traded the square footage and for acreage and a lot of wide open spaces. And it used to be life was full of coffee dates and lunch meetings and happy hours and all of that. And now we have shed all of that out and really pared our life down to what is life-giving to us. And it's not that I didn't love and care for the people that we were circumstantially around, but so many of those relationships were just literally based on circumstance and proximity. And so we've really cleaned a lot of that out. And it's amazing when you've got these things that are important to you. And for me, as a person of faith, I want to read the Bible every day and I want to do my gratitude walks. But when you live in the hustle and bustle or you allow yourself to be caught up with that, you can't find time to do those things that seemingly mean so much to you, but somehow they're so hard to do. They just feel inaccessible. You're just exhausted. And now it is not a problem for me to read the Bible every day. It's not a problem for me to put down work and go outside with my mala, my prayer beads, and do my 108 gratitudes. And I have time for that because I've changed my life. And that feels like massive success to me now.
Yes. And I think about that in like my own journey of, you know, having that, what the world defines as success. And now, like if you had told me that I was going to be living in rural Arkansas and, is so different, right? But
Yeah.
success to me is being able to spend time with my family, being able to live close to my family, having the time freedom, the location freedom. And like you mentioned, being able to have my mornings where I can spend time in the Word. And that is way more life giving than anything money can buy. And so, yes, it is a trade off, but I think, yeah, that conversation of redefining success has been something that has been at the forefront of my mind becoming an entrepreneur. So you said that so well. And it's a hard lesson, but when the Lord, I think, teaches you that, it is so life-giving and joy-giving that you look back and you're like, I can't ever go back, you know?
Yeah, and I would say, my husband and I have talked through why couldn't we have done that in the city that we loved? We lived there for years and we loved it there. That was home. That city was home to me. And even though I grew up in the country, I am a lot city girl. I do love the convenience and all of the access and the dining and, just the
Mhm.
energy of it all. I lived in a university town. There was just a lot that came along with it. And why couldn't we have separated ourselves from that vibe there and lived the life we're living now? And at first I struggled with grace for myself. Like, why couldn't I have done that? If I really wanted to do it, I should have done it. But I also think there's a lot of strength and power in saying, I didn't figure it out. So I made a change. And I know a major change isn't something that everyone's comfortable with. But when people say to my lifestyle now, like, oh, it must be nice. I'd love to, move out of the city. I'd love to, whatever it is. It's like, how much do you really love to do that? Because you would do it, you can make a change anytime you want. We hold ourselves back and we think my son has to be at this private school or, I have to have access to these things or I couldn't live a life that's not convenient. That's the whole goal is convenience in this culture. And to finally get to a place where you say, who says so? And I can actually change it. That's not a must be nice thing. That is a must be very intentional.
Yeah. I've even seen some of my friends, their husbands have completely changed careers because their work life balance wasn't healthy and they wanted to be home with their family. And it meant that their kids couldn't go to private school or, that their finances were severely cut or they had to move homes. And that's hard. I can't imagine, that's challenging, but I think those are big sacrifices, and I don't think you realize until you get to the other side, just with that redefinition, I guess, a new word I just created.
When you do that, that breeds so much confidence because you do something that no one else really gets
Yeah.
and you're doing it anyway. And that gives a ton of confidence. I mean, I've had to balance it with self-righteousness, making sure that I don't find my
Hmm.
life choice to be superior because I loved the choices that I was making before and I loved where I was at. And just because I've left that doesn't mean I judge that. It's been a
Yeah.
balance, but it has given me a ton of confidence to say, I can start over at any minute. I am not afraid of that. I can change it anytime. There's nothing holding me back. And it's really given me like a burst of power.
Yeah. We can do hard things and make
Mhm.
hard decisions. Yeah. So you mentioned your book, and I would love to hear more about the process of writing your book. It's called the HR Easy Button book series. And so what inspired the title and what's the heart behind your book series?
Yeah, just like with you in sales, that seems just like such a natural thing for you. I take for granted that I've been doing HR for 20 years. So when a business owner pays me to help them with their HR, I find myself constantly saying, you can do this on your own. Like you can do this yourself. You don't have to rely on me, but it depends on where you want to spend your time. Do you want to figure it out yourself or do you want to pay me to do it? And so I've had this kind of tension ever since I started my firm because I want to empower small to mid-sized business owners to grow in their confidence in this area and take what they can and run with it, and also know what they are willing to spend time on and what they're not willing to spend time on, and then outsource the appropriate pieces. And so I kept repeating several things over and over again, which that is a green flashing light. When you are repeating something you feel like to a lot of different people, that is a book inside of you, in my personal opinion, because it's something that you've said, you say again, a bunch of people need to hear it. And it's like, why don't I write this down? Why don't I just memorialize this? And so I'd been, doing that in the corporate setting and seeing every business, even though each industry, as I'd get recruited in, they'd say, this learning curve, you're going to have to figure out faculty. You're going to have to figure out insurance. You're going to have to figure out mortgage or, whatever industry I found myself in. And I would always laugh to myself and think people are people. And to me, it does not really matter what industry I'm working in. This is the whole thing is figuring out how we can make this a healthy organization so people want to join it and then they feel proud to actually do the work and it's fulfilling to them. That's really it. It doesn't matter what industry it is. And so I think it's similar with sales, like, can you attach yourself to the product? And then are you able to be an evangelist about it? It doesn't necessarily matter what it is. Like, does that work for you? And so I just felt like through all of these industry changes, and then as I started my firm, there were 13 foundational principles that just kept popping up to me that matter inside of HR. And so I started taking my 20 years worth of templates that I created and blog posts that I've written and just all of this content. And I had my executive assistant start segmenting it out. I said, here are 13 areas. Please take these and put them inside of the 13 areas. And from that, I took a look and saw what I felt like were gaps, what I didn't have tools and resources and writing around and started writing that. And then once I had all of that down, I threw it into AI and said, okay, here is all this content. Does this make sense? Does this have a flow? And how should I break this up or what does it look like? And between AI and a publishing coach that I hired, what we figured out was I had written over 900 pages and I was
Wow.
thinking I was writing a textbook of sorts. And my publishing coach, Karen, was like, no one's going to read this book. This is so textbooky. Like you've got to figure it out. And so we peeled apart and said there's these 5 foundational things that a small to mid-sized business would need. And then let's get a little bit more strategic and a little bit more strategic. So we broke it down into 3 books. And I've joked around that it's a trilogy, but it is certainly not a titillating trilogy. It's not a page turner. It's a resource guide. So I've taken my practical tools and then I've written why this matters, why you want to do it, some data behind it. And then I've given the practical tools, templates, and checklists to help someone build out their own HR foundation. And it was fun for me. I liked the writing process because it's what I've been doing for so long. And I keep thinking I've got these personal books in my mind that I want to write. And I can't get to those because HR is just like at the forefront of everything I've done for 20 years. So I'm like, I have to get this out first. You asked about the writing process. So once I got all the content together, I sent it over to a paid editor and she came back and said, it's not really warm enough. You need some more stories and examples. And so I added those in and then went back to her. She did another half turn of an edit. And from there, I threw it in AI and said, I want graphs and charts. So where should I be adding some pictorial things? And so it pointed out like, here's some areas where you're light. So then I built graphs and charts to go inside of there. And so it took a little over, I guess, I was right at around 16 months worth of writing and editing and back and forth before we hit the publishing process, which has taken about 2 months.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. So, it's interesting because you mentioned like things that really come easy for you that you're repeating that are just, you mentioned kind of that green light, flashing green light. And I think that is when you know that the Lord has given you a natural gifting and talent, with HR. And so, and you even mentioned it's like you struggle because it's like, people are hiring you to teach this, but that is, part of, and I think I referenced this on maybe on your podcast, but Proverbs 31, like we are given these gifts to steward well, right? And so what seems easy for you seems overwhelming to me. And I have worked with plenty of HR executives and I am always like, I don't know how you do what you do. I have so much appreciation for it, but there is such a need for what you do, HR and people operations. And so from a small business perspective, because most of my listeners are small businesses, they're looking to grow and to scale their operations. What do you wish more small business owners understood about HR and people operations?
Yeah. I actually just talked to a small business owner yesterday and she called and she was being kind because she's a small business owner. And she was like, I'm just trying to figure out like what exactly you offer so we can do business. And I said, what's your problem? Because rarely a small business owner comes to me and they're like, it's smooth sailing. I have an easy time identifying when I need to hire. I have an easy time getting people motivated to work. Like that's not that's not it, right? Like that's not what's going on in small businesses. And so I said, just tell me, like, what are you struggling with right now? And she said, I've got an employee. She's around 90 days in. She keeps overstepping. I need her to like do this in her lane, but she keeps dabbling and I just don't know if it's a good fit. And so I said, okay, so have you clarified her role? Does she have a job description? And after you've hired her, have you ever talked about that job description again before? And I said, I would recommend that tomorrow you go in the office and you just take a curious approach. Hey, in a small business, there's so many things to do. Do you feel like you're set up well to really go deep in your lane? I know that there's a lot of things that we see in small businesses where we could fix this over here. And there's a lot of low hanging fruit in a small business. But do you feel like you understand like how to succeed or what success looks like in your role? Because I told this business owner, I bet you that you just haven't clarified. So this person's like just trying to bring value. And I severely doubt they're trying to step on anyone's toes. They probably just aren't exactly sure what their lane is and what the expectations are. And they see other areas where they can make an impact. And so they're just like, boom, boom, boom. I'm going to work over here. I'm going to work over here. And so you need to say, like, this is so important. What we've carved out for you is so important. Do you feel like you've been trained and you understand this? Do we have metrics around that? Do you know where the reporting looks like? Have we written a standard operating procedure on that? Have we done everything in this? And then do that with every single task and responsibility. And that person's going to be busy, I guarantee you, for another 90 days to 6 months getting all of that figured out. So at a minimum, it prolongs the conversation, but at a maximum, it clarifies their role and their expectations. And now they can soar and you can go back to saying, that lane's taken care of. And now I can focus on what's coming next and maybe what my next hire would be. So that's just a small example. After
Yeah.
that, I was like, you need to join one of my collectives, which is a membership program. It's my most affordable program. It's called HR in a Box for small business owners. We meet every single month. I teach on a different HR concept and then they have time to do Q&A so they can kind of learn from each other. And then I answer their questions about their specific business. And I was like, you need to do that. But let me just answer this question for you because so many people, they know that they don't feel confident in HR, but it's like this elusive HR. What
Mhm.
exactly even is HR as a business owner? I feel like I should be doing something. I don't know what it is. And I don't even know how to work with it. And saying you're going to call a consulting firm sounds fancier than where a small business is.
Yeah. The thing is that I realize about working with HR in a more formal capacity from corporate to as a small business owner, the importance of everything that you just said is that it really helps you as the owner of your business, the CEO of your business, streamline your operations. And the ripple effects of that are mind blowing. Having someone and being a people leader and leading well and creating a culture where people want to work and they have clear expectations. And when they can show up to work and they love what they do because they understand how they contribute to the organization, no matter how big or small your organization is, you could be a 2, 3 person shop. That is so critical to the overall health and sustainability and success of your business. And that is
Yes.
HR. Yeah.
It is. And I hear so many business owners say, especially ones that came from corporate, I don't want to be corporate. They'll say that. I started my business. I don't want to be corporate. So it's like they avoid HR because in their mind, based on the experience that they had, likely, they feel like if you have a formal HR function or you put these processes in place, then you've gone corporate and then no one wants to work for your small business. And I would argue most of your employees have come from corporate, a lot of them have, or maybe they've come from just an organized small business otherwise, and they're expecting you to give them good compensation and good benefits. They are wondering if you're happy with their performance. They're wondering what happens if you're not happy with their performance. They would like to know more about the expectations, but you're not offering it. And you're doing it kind of in the name of, we're not corporate or like,
Yeah.
we don't need all that. But then your employees are sitting around kind of floundering. And so you owe that to them as a small business owner with 3 people, 5 people, 8 people. You still need a legitimate structure. You still need expectations and onboarding. If we don't show up and onboard our people in a professional way, then they're probably going to show up in a less professional way. And later you're going to wonder, why aren't they coming on time? Or why don't they take this seriously? Or why is their communication so informal? And it's like, well, you set the stage pretty poorly for them. And so
Yeah.
they don't understand your expectations are more than that. You have to show up as the business owner professionally if you're going to expect them to act professionally. Or if you utilize technology in your business, but your onboarding is fill out your tax forms in paper and then scan them to me, but you don't have a printer. So take a picture from your phone and email them to, then you're setting this weird expectation like we're not tech savvy. But yet, I need you to track all of these things in our technology. There's inconsistency there, and your employees on accident are judging you for it, and they're taking you
Hmm.
less seriously because of it. It's very important. But most small business owners say, like, we're small, we don't need that. Oh, we're all kind of jack of all trades. Everyone's a generalist. And I just want to like pop that balloon for business owners and
Yes.
say, that's not helpful.
Right. And I see this, and I have been guilty of this myself in my own businesses, is that we don't treat ourselves like the CEO we are. And I see that manifest itself with everything that you just said from an HR perspective to, how we show up with our employees. And if we are wanting to grow a thriving, sustainable business, then we need to show up like the CEO we are. So,
Yeah, and when you don't, and you're not holding yourself accountable to that, then you can't hold others accountable. You can try, but you'll feel like an imposter. And so when you're coaching other people, you'll either not coach them because you're very aware of your shortcomings, or you will coach them and then you won't hold them actually
mm,
accountable to any standards because you're not holding yourself to those. It just weakens you as a leader and your employees see it. I mean, they might love you, they might stay loyal to you, but they see those shortcomings and they likely want more.
yes, yes. So, if there is a small business owner listening and she is saying, okay, I am hearing this, I'm resonating, and I'm outgrowing my current business model, or I'm just not showing up well at all, what would you say to her? And how could she work with you? How could she get in touch with you and work directly with you?
Yeah, I would say use AI. I know, the verdict's still out on how a lot of people feel about artificial intelligence, but it is a tool and you can even, you can get the free version, the paid version is like $600 a year, very affordable. And so I would literally type into AI, I am a small business owner in X niche and I focus on X, Y, and Z. My products are X, Y, and Z. Right now, I have either just myself and I'm filling all roles, or I have myself and this person and this person. If I have job descriptions, I've attached them, or I don't have job descriptions. And here is a little bit about my workflow. And by the way, if this sounds really obnoxious to type it all out, just hit the little microphone on AI and talk it out. And about every 3 minutes, stop and make sure it loads. That way you don't talk for 10 minutes and it doesn't capture it all. But talk through it all. It does not have to make a ton of sense. AI is so smart. It will map it all out for you. But I would say, I'm needing standard operating procedures and I don't have them. Can you help me know which ones I need to write? And I need to better understand my tech stack because I do this for emailing and I do this for team communication and I do this for accounting and I do this for my CRM, and help me understand my tech stack and any inefficiencies or redundancies in there. Just talk through your business like you're just dumping it out to a coach and say, I'm needing some method to the madness. Where should I start? AI will literally start to compile all of this for you. And it will even say, okay, you need this SOPs. And you can say, can you help me write those? Can you, based
Hmm.
off of what I said, can you help me write those? And it'll give you a shell. Now, it's not going to know all of your steps, but it'll give you a good shell. So you're not starting from nowhere. So I would say start there, sis. Like it's easy, it's free. Get yourself some traction. After you do that, you're going to be like, I do have a real business. It just felt really messy in my head, but now I've got all of this mapped out. And if you've got a business plan you created for a bank or any of that, like drag all of that in there and it'll start putting it all together and it'll be beautiful. As far as working with me, that HR in a box is a great place for a small business owner to start. We charge $450 a month. We've got that 90-minute call where they learn and then they also have the Q&A. It puts them in a community setting. We've got a community platform that we use where they can chat in questions throughout the month as well. And me or my team will respond to those. And we also share tools, resources, templates, checklists, downloadable documents they can use in their business practically every single month after the content is taught. And so that's a great first step, the most affordable step for I'd say my smallest client on fractional is probably 8 employees, but we work fractionally as well, whether it's on HR audits from like a project-based perspective, or we do where we work like half a day a week for a business or a full day a week for a business, depending on their needs. And most of my clients will come to me and say, I don't know.
Mhm.
I need help. And
Yeah.
that's the whole point of why we start with this HR audit from the fractional level. It's just a one-time fee. We get in, we ask them a bazillion questions, and then we meet with them and go over a comprehensive report where we explain, here's everything that we see. We've done a gap analysis. So here's what we'd recommend at your size, not to over formalize you, not to make you corporate, but what you need at your size to make sure that you've got a good and intentional culture, to make sure if there's any legal potential issues, we're going to cover those for you and make sure that we've got you nailed down in that area. If there's any compliance issues and things like that, here's what you need for your foundation. And then in the future, here's what we'd recommend. That's usually where we start with a small business, but they can always drop into that collective membership program too.
Awesome. And we will link the HR in a box in the show notes for any that is interested in that. So, and then any last final thoughts or anything that you want to share?
Knowing that you've got mostly women who listen to your podcast, I would say I feel like as women, and it's not just a feeling, there's a ton of data out there that we undervalue ourselves often, whether it's not charging enough for our products or our services or our time or, discounting our work at the beginning before we've validated ourselves. And I would just challenge you to show up as the person that you know you are, not necessarily the person who's proven it to other people or the person who has the letters behind their name or the 10 years in business behind their name. Show up with your skills and experiences, and you will attract the right people into your business. And if you feel like you have to discount it, you're going to end up attracting people who are expecting less of you or more for less money. And so, really owning what you know to be true about yourself, even if you're having to show up with courage instead of confidence, you will draw in the right people who want to work with you. And I would say, like, that's the fight of all of our lives, and it's work worth doing.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with the She
Yeah.
Says Differently listeners.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm so glad we were able to connect and feel like our paths are not going to stop crossing.
Yes, for sure. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the She Sells Differently podcast. We're cheering you on as always. And stay tuned next Wednesday. We will have a fresh episode. And thanks for tuning in. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of She Sells Differently. Friends, it would be a huge blessing to me if you would take 2 seconds to rate and subscribe to my podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, I'm cheering you on in your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time.